Chapter 1895 Crossing the Line of Fire. More than 5 hours later, they finally arrived at the train station in Dandong, the northernmost city of KG Kingdom. As the two had agreed, Li Qingmei went out first, and Xian Haixue watched from behind. In this way, the two people left the train station safely. However, the two people looked obviously different from northerners. They came from the capital, and they had the air of being able to have enough food all year round, which made them different from the locals at first glance. So this caught the attention of a station staff. After Xian Haixue watched Li Qingmei leave, he was about to follow and meet her. But just before the battle, he was stopped by the staff. "Please wait a moment, sir." The staff looked him up and down with suspicion. "I'm sorry, we received intelligence that an important person from Presang tried to escape by train. Judging from your dress, you should have come from Presang, right?" Xian Haixue still wanted to quibble. "What are you talking about? I'm not that kind of person," the staff member said. "Then please hand over your ID. I must confirm your identity to avoid letting someone run away who shouldn't be let go." Xian Haixue was a little scared. His identity was not checked. If someone really took it seriously, Chuize would soon find out that he had come to Dantong. The staff member was in his 40s, an old railway employee with very sharp intuition. He saw Xian Haixue's guilty expression, his eyes became sharper, and he stretched out his hand and clamped Xian Haixue's wrist tightly. "Although he looks thin, he is surprisingly strong. Come with me. We have to carefully confirm your identity before we can let you go." Xian Haixue was so scared that cold sweat broke out on his head. Because of the commotion here, several staff members not far away looked over. There were also a few railway police officers who seemed to be heading this way. Xian Haixue gritted his teeth, reached into his pocket, took out a pack of cigarettes and stuffed it into the station attendant's hand. "Please, please." He didn't know what to say at this moment. He could only pray that the other party would let him go. When the station attendant saw the cigarettes, his eyes lit up. When Xian Haixue came, he brought some special products from Pilasang with him, which are in short supply even in Pilasang. Not to mention in a remote and poor place like Dandong. But he could not have imagined that a pack of cigarettes like this could provide a family of 3 with enough mixed noodles to eat for a month. The station attendant hesitated for a moment, quietly put the cigarette into his pocket, and then walked around him to check other people. Xian Haixue felt as if he had been pardoned, and he quickened his pace, as if he was afraid that the other party would go back on his word. After they were far away from the train station, he and Li Qingmei made sure that there was no one else around, and then they hugged each other tightly. The first step of escaping from Presang has been successful. But if it is too early to be happy now, it would be too naive. The hardest thing is yet to come. It's not enough to just come to the border. If they wanted to go to the Khotan Empire, they had to cross the long border in the north of Dandong, where there were snow-capped mountains. The two had no means of transportation and could only cross the mountains on their own. But there were many sentry posts in the middle. This was left over from the war period. In order to prevent invasion from northern countries, the outposts are particularly dense. The two were worried that if they received an order from Presang, they would lose their only chance to escape, so they quickly ran north. They were not familiar with this place and came to Dandong with a burst of energy, but they had no idea how to cross the blockade. It's impossible to ask the locals, right? The two began to walk far along the blockade, observing where the route was better. However, such sneaky behavior would naturally be easily discovered by border soldiers. They were also shouted at many times and told to stay away. Xian Haixue and Li Qingmei had no choice but to bite the bullet and keep a certain distance while pretending to take a walk nearby. But in the middle of the night, this kind of action was extremely strange. Later, when Xian Haixue recalled, he understood why the border soldiers did not come to arrest them. Because every year there are so many people like them who want to cross the border. Besides, the soldiers here are just following the rules and are not emotionless plants. So much so that no one arrested them despite their ridiculous behavior. But at this moment, they were really too anxious. By this point, the commander should have woken up. He will be entertaining foreign guests in the evening, and they may not take his role as the cook seriously. But the next day, he would definitely give an order and send people to arrest them. A random order from the superior could be a disaster for the couple. Time waits for no one. The two men walked along the border for nearly 2 hours and hesitated for a long time, but there were sentry posts everywhere. In the end, Xian Haixio and Li Qingmei discussed it and decided that they could not wait any longer. They chose a path that looked shorter, which led to a frozen river, and the other side was about 20 meters away. If you run all the way there, you can successfully reach the Khotan Empire. The two men acted as soon as they said they would. They took advantage of the cover of night, avoided the light of the searchlight, and sneaked over quietly. As a result, when the two men had just run to the river and were about to rush forward hand in hand, a dazzling beam of light shone directly on them. Bang! 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 The gunshots were particularly cruel in the cold darkness. It's like the death knell. Xian Haixio's body suddenly froze in place, and he felt as if the life was being stripped away from his body. The black muzzle of the gun was aimed at them. Li Qingmei and Xian Haixio fell on the ice. What you think you are brave turns out to be so vulnerable when facing death. Xian Haixio thought he was dead. But when he was dragged to the checkpoint like a dead dog by the border soldiers, he found that there was no blood on his body. Li Qingmei was fine, but her face was extremely pale, and she was so scared that she couldn't utter a word. Xian Haixio breathed a sigh of relief. It turned out that the previous gunshots were just warnings, and the soldiers did not really shoot at them. The whistling sound of bullets in their ears was the sound of bullets hitting the ice. A young man who looked like an officer came over and threw the thick dogskin hat in his hand on the table. The yellow light burned the faces of the two men. "Tell me, what's going on with you? Don't you know that crossing the border without permission is a serious crime?" The officer looked at the two of them with a joking expression. As a border guard, he has seen too many such situations. Li Qingmei's lips were trembling, and she couldn't utter a word. It was Xian Haixio who came up with a quick idea. When people are at the moment of death, they can really burst out with wit that they don't have in normal times. He slammed the table and started yelling instead. "What are you doing? We were sent here from Pre-Sun to carry out a special mission. You have ruined a very important mission." The officer just looked at him with contempt. How could such a trick fool an officer who had worked at a border outpost for several years? Xian Haixio thought that at a time like this the only way out was to risk one's life. If they cannot escape, they will all die miserably as long as they wait until dawn and news from Presang arrives. So he just took out his proof. When Xian Haixio came, he carried a special item in his heavy bag, a silver wine glass. That is the proof of being a loved one. If you don't believe me, just look at this. He deliberately said loudly, as if he was very angry. In fact, at this time, Dantong's soldiers couldn't resist the wine glass. Only the top leaders of KG country knew about this thing. But Xian Haixio was lucky, because the officer in front of him happened to be from Presang. The quality of this wine glass cannot be fake. He has similar things at home. So immediately, his attitude towards Xian Haixio became respectful. "I'm sorry, sir. I scared you." Xian Haixio felt relieved, but pretended to be indifferent on the surface. "Forget it, you don't know either. It's not your fault. We still have important tasks to do. Send us away now." The officer frowned when he heard this and said nothing. The wine glass of the beloved one is indeed real, and the two people in front of him also came from Presang. However, their behavior was indeed strange and still made the officers suspicious. He opened his mouth and said, "It's very dangerous here. People can easily freeze to death at night. You two should rest here for a night. We'll talk about it tomorrow." Tomorrow he will report to his superiors to confirm the identities of the two men. Xian Haixio's heart tightened. If that were the case, both of them would definitely die. Xian Haixio looked at the young officer in front of him, and then looked at the border guards around him who were watching the fun. He quickly took out his backpack and took out the cigarettes and good wine he had brought with him. Okay. You all have worked hard, come, try this. These are good cigarettes and good wine brought from Presang. It is said that the commander also smokes this brand of cigarettes. The life of the soldiers guarding the northern border is very hard. Seeing these luxurious things, Everyone's eyes suddenly lit up. Li Chengmei also came to her senses. She was a smart woman and certainly knew what to do next. The two men took out all the cigarettes and alcohol they had, stuffed them into the soldiers' hands, and lit them. Li Chengmei also took the initiative to take out the bacon and bread that she had brought with her on the road. These are also foods that they cannot eat on a normal day. The soldiers were so happy that they forgot for a moment that the identities of Xian Haixio and Li Chengmei were questionable. As the saying goes, one who eats someone's food should be grateful to him, and soon their attitude towards the two people became warm. Everyone was smoking and drinking in the crowded outpost, and the alcohol soon made them drowsy and confused. Xian Haixio waited until the young officer was drunk and his face turned red, then took the opportunity to say that they both had important matters to attend to and had to leave. The officer agreed, with a cheerful wave of his hand. Xian Haixio and Li Chengmei were afraid that they would go back on their word, so they hurriedly left the outpost hand in hand. "Go!" Xian Haixio whispered to Li Chengmei. "While the people inside are still eating and drinking, now is the best time to escape." At this time, it was already past 4 in the morning. They can't delay any longer, they will die anyway, so they might as well fight. The two men ran all the way and came directly to the river surface, then ran to the other side desperately. Suddenly, there was a shouting and cursing voice behind me. It turns out that there are cameras on the river surface that will alert the soldiers in the outpost based on the movement of human figures. Xian Haixio and Li Chengmei didn't care about anything and just ran forward. This was the time for their life or death. Bang! 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 The bullets rang like firecrackers, and Xian Haixio and Li Chengmei thought they were going to die. But the sound of bullets was very dense, but not a single bullet hit them. The two of them worked together and finally ran to the other side of the river. The young officer quickly said, "Stop. Don't shoot anymore. They have crossed the border. Continuing to shoot will cause a military conflict." The soldiers cursed and denounced the two men, but there were some hidden smiles and blessings in their eyes. It is their job to shoot. But if the muzzle of the gun is raised an inch, it is their conscience. After running across the glacier, the gunfire stopped behind them, and Xian Haixio and Li Chengmei were so excited that their eyes were filled with tears. They didn't dare stop and continued to run forward. Happiness seems to be right in front of us. But is it really that simple? When they decided to flee from the kingdom of Cage, every step was destined to be full of difficulties. Yes, they came to the Khotan Empire. But how will they live next? In terms of language, the Cage Kingdom spoke a North African language, while the Khotan Empire spoke Arabic. Two people can speak some English. However, they knew nothing about the Khotan Empire. In the Ice Age apocalypse, if you want to survive, you can only rely on powerful forces. If they flee here, there is a high probability that they will be captured and forced to work as laborers. That kind of life is worse than living in the country of Keiji. But for Li Chengmei, they had no other choice. Fortunately, they still have hope at this time. When Xian Haixio and his team came to North Africa, they were participating in a multinational project construction. He was not the only one who came at that time, there were also his fellow villagers. In Hopu City, opposite the snow-capped mountains, his uncle lived here and settled down and started a business in his early years. The two of them had been in contact for the past few years. My uncle had a very good living condition here. It was said that with the innate intelligence of the Huashu people, he had made a name for himself in the local area. Although they have not been in contact for 2 years, Xian Haixio still firmly believes that as long as he can find his uncle, he will be able to live a stable life with Li Chengmei. In front of the two people, there is still a snowy mountain to climb. Although I thought I was fully prepared before coming here, I had supplies for about 10 days. But at the outpost, more than half of the food was taken out in order to bribe the soldiers. The two could only pray to God again, and then began to cross the snow-capped mountains in the severe cold. As for what happened in Cage Country, the two of them no longer cared. Crossing the snow-capped mountains is an extremely difficult task. Even in a tropical environment, it is extremely cold here. The two people prepared in advance by stuffing thermal blankets and plastic bags into their clothes. However, Crossing the snow-capped mountains is too demanding on physical fitness, and Li Qingmei's physical strength is far from enough. According to the plan, it would only take 2 days to climb the snow mountain, but the two of them ended up climbing for 5 days and still couldn't make it. The shortage of food and physical exhaustion made the two people lose hope for a time. Every time they climbed a hill and thought that Hopu City was behind them, what they saw was another hill in the distance. The thought of death arose in the minds of the two, but was quickly suppressed by Xian Haixio. The most difficult level has been passed. As long as we can cross the snow-capped mountains, we can survive. How can we fail at the last step? The two of them pulled each other and, under almost impossible circumstances, actually crossed the snow mountain and reached the other side. In the desolate area, the ground was covered with white. When seeing this peaceful snowfield, Xian Haixio felt very heavy in his heart, because this shows that there is no human activity nearby. Fortunately, when they reached the top of the mountain, they confirmed the direction of the human village. At this time, the food in the two men's pockets was completely eaten. With a belief, the two people burst out with amazing perseverance and waded through the snow in the direction of their memory. After several hours, they finally saw the human village. Those white igloos were obviously built in the last 2 years. The two men suddenly felt motivated. They walked forward, found a house, and started knocking on the door. There are very few people living near the border, and no one answered after I knocked on several doors. The two were so hungry that they could only hold on. Finally, they knocked on a door and a middle-aged woman with a cold expression came out. The two tried to communicate in the language of Keiji, but they didn't know whether the woman could understand. The two told their sufferings, hoping to get mercy. Perhaps because she had seen too many people like them, the woman did not let them into the house. She just pointed to the igloo next to her and slammed the door shut. The two men had no choice but to go next door. This time, a burly man opened the door. Xian Haixio was afraid that the other party would refuse him entry again, so he took out the only pack of cigarettes he had left and handed it to him. Seeing the cigarette, the man who had looked indifferent at first softened his expression. Xian Haixio provokes the other party, who can understand the language of Keiji country. After all, they live on the border. Maybe he was from Keiji country in the past. Xian Haixio gave the other party an address. As long as you can send us here, I will give you a generous reward. He took out some material exchange coupons from the Keiji country and handed them to the other party. Along the border, there will inevitably be the exchange of materials in private. Xian Haixio no longer has use for these exchange vouchers, but the other party has a way to use them. When the man saw so many redemption coupons, he realized that the young couple were not ordinary people. In addition, Xian Haixio promised to give them generous rewards, so he agreed. The man heated up some noodles made of mixed flour for the two of them. They were so hungry, having not had a full meal for several days, that they no longer cared about anything else and started eating with big mouthfuls. The man sat aside, smoking a cigarette and chatting with them in a random manner. While chatting, he deliberately inquired about the identities of the two. Xian Haixio naturally didn't dare to reveal his true identity and dealt with it vaguely. During the conversation, he learned the man's name, Duraken, a mixed race of black and white. After finishing the meal, Xian Haixio and Li Qingmei felt much more at ease. The two encouraged each other, believing that as long as they could reach Hopu City and find the uncle, they would be safe. Duraken chuckled and said, "Your uncle is a big shot. He lives in such a good place." Xian Haixio's uncle is a successful person. After hearing what Duraken said, the two felt more at ease. Duraken asked the two men to rest here tonight and set off tomorrow. The two men were exhausted after working for a long time, so they temporarily slept in a storage room that Duraken had cleaned up. Pleasant City in Cage Country. The commander sat in a chair, holding his beloved Pomeranian in his arms. Chuize stood beside him, his head lowered and his body tense. There was no expression on the commander's face, and it didn't seem like he was angry, but no one dared to relax in front of him. Commander Shaun is moody. While laughing, he would suddenly twist off a person's head and throw it to the people below, letting them kick the head like a ball while laughing. Once at a banquet, The commander was in high spirits and asked the wife of one of his subordinates to strip naked and dance on the spot. After being rejected, her naked body was found in the snow at Place de la Plage the next day. For a whole month, no one dared to collect the bodies. Finally, the commander thought they were an eyesore and sent people to deal with them. Serving the emperor is like serving a tiger. Even Chui Zhe, who knows Commander Shan's preferences better than ordinary people, does not dare to speak out at this time. The commander picked up a glass of foreign wine from the table and gulped down half of it. Then he said lightly, "That bastard Xian Haixio is really something. I just slept with his wife. Is it necessary to be so angry? Didn't I also give him generous rewards so that he can live a superior life? This ungrateful thing must be dealt with." Chui Zhe bowed and said, "Commander, he has fled to the Cardon Empire. He should be in Hopu City now." Escaped abroad? Commander Shan raised a cruel arc at the corner of his mouth. Do they think that they will be safe as long as they flee abroad? As a rule, those who flee abroad are usually not held accountable. But that's just the usual case. If the commander wants to catch them, it will be difficult for them to escape. Lieutenant Colonel Chui Zhe. Yes, Commander. Go and bring them back to me. Commander Shan gave a simple order. He stroked the Pomeranian's smooth and soft fur with an indulgent smile on his face. I am still too kind to them. Alas, why are people always like this? If you are a little nice to them, they will not cherish your kindness, but will only resent you in their hearts. Remember, catch him alive. Doesn't he resent me because of his wife? Then I will hold a grand banquet for them and let him see for himself how his wife becomes a plaything of everyone. A happy smile appeared on his face. That scene, just thinking about it makes me excited. And his target is also those couples. There was no problem with Xian Haixio and Li Qingmei's identity documents, and they passed the inspection smoothly. They went through this kind of examination 3 times in total, and their hearts were almost in their throats. After the inspection, the two agreed to leave the train station one after the other, walk all the way north, and meet again in a deserted place. The emperor is far away, and the north is a very poor and backward place called Cage. When Chui Zhe's orders came here, it was difficult to ensure their execution. After all, it is difficult for civil servants in such remote areas to have enough food on weekdays. They are all hungry and look pale and thin, with deep sunken faces. Dear viewers, thanks for staying with me. We'll try to get you more updates. Please like and subscribe and share the video with your friends. Love you all.